Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar on Business Central and Copilot. We'll get started in a minute or so, just giving a few more people a chance to come in. Just as a reminder, we are recording this, so anybody that's joined, if you want a copy of the recording, then we'll be sending out contact information after the webinar. Feel free to just get in chat, or get in touch rather. Okay, well, we'll make a start. A couple of housekeeping things to begin with. If anybody can't hear me, just flag up a message in the Q&A or the chat, and I will try to speak more loudly. If anybody can't hear any of the videos as we go through, likewise say that. There is a Q&A function, so if you've got any burning questions, we'll answer those either as we go through or save some time at the end as well. A couple of polls will be running here too, and I'm interested, first of all, if I can find my polls button. So first of all, find out as we go through this, what word best describes your feelings towards AI. It's not crucial that you answer this, but I am interested to see what people's thoughts and feelings are towards it. Anyway, feel free to think about what that word might be. We'll make a start, getting some answers coming in, which is fantastic. So first things first, about me. My name is Steve Brooks. I'm Chief Revenue Officer here at Truly SMB. A little bit of history for you by way of how I got here. So I started my career as a chartered accountant in the UK, moved across to implementing Microsoft technology around 2012 or so, spent a few years at Bamboo Cloud, which was very focused on fixed price, fixed scope, Business Central implementations. We sold Bamboo Cloud to a company called Pax8, where I spent the last 2 years looking at partner experience and partner enablement programs. And now starting in 2025, we've launched Truly SMB, which is all about bringing simplicity of AI and technology implementations to small businesses. And I guess that really kind of takes me on to the next slide. How are we any different? Well, we exist because we think that small businesses like yours should have access to the same technology that the big guys have. So we've taken some of the learnings that we had from time at places like Bamboo Cloud and Pax8 and tried to package up things that we know work, that we know are useful, into smaller, more consumable, more digestible subscription options. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the webinar. But really the focus for today is on these areas here. I'll spend some time looking over what is Dynamics 365 Business Central as a standalone product. We'll also look at what Microsoft Copilot is and does, and then we'll go on to looking at how those two programs, Business Central and Copilot, work together. I've structured it like this because there's some really cool stuff that all of those, or each of those products, do standalone, but then it's really cool to be able to see how they can come together and, crucially, what that means for your small business as well. And then again, as I sort of touched on there, we'll look at next steps and what you can do to actually get going with some of this stuff. So let me move across to this slide, why now? And I suppose why now is because even though there's a lot of cool technology available, even though probably everybody on this webinar moved to the cloud, some years ago, there is still a big amount of manual, slow, tedious, repetitive tasks. I was looking actually a few weeks ago as we were starting everything off with Truly SMB at some business analysis work that I did, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. And interestingly, so many of the kind of the pain points that we saw in this report that we wrote back then are still the same today. Insights take time, disconnected systems don't talk to each other, manual processes are clunky, relying quite often on people, not process, the skill of the individual rather than a well-documented process. And the more of those that you have, the more prone they are to inaccuracies and inconsistencies. And I made the same joke earlier today and I forgot to correct it. Obviously, we have deliberately spelled inconsistencies wrong on the slide there. But I think kind of crucially, AI is giving us the chance now to try to remedy some of these things, to be that automation, to be that kind of speed up process that everybody's been looking for, to try to eliminate some of these tedious, repetitive tasks. So it's really come to work. It launched really, when we say AI, we're talking particularly about these kind of generative large language models, the likes of ChatGPT, which launched a couple of years back now. But now it's really started to come to work. And with things like Microsoft Copilot being far more secure and far more respectful of your privacy and your security and your permissions, it really has been, much more widely available to people and much more trustworthy. In fact, if you look at the survey, the links on the slide here, 75% of people are already using AI at work. And of those, 85% say it helps them focus on their most important work. And we'll kind of see that throughout today as a bit of a theme. It allows you to stay in control of your most important work. AI isn't here to replace people, to replace jobs, to do an entire process without you checking the quality of the output. And Microsoft are really clear on that as well. We'll see a bit more of that later through today's webinar, but it's really important to understand as we go through this that AI is there to support you, to speed up some of those things, to simplify, to guide, to discover, but it's not there to replace you. It's to help you focus on the things that are most important, perhaps some of the things that the AI can't do and previously you've not had a chance to look at before. So, on to what is Business Central. Give me 1 second, just double checking our chat. All good there. So what is Business Central? Well, Business Central is one part of Microsoft's AI-powered stack. And you'll see in the top left-hand quadrant to this diagram here, it represents the business data and processes. But really, think of Business Central, if you're not using it already, as Microsoft's small business finance system. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a second. It sits alongside apps like Microsoft 365, particularly things like Teams for productivity and collaboration. And then the Power Platform for things like business process automation, Power BI for high quality reporting. But whichever tool you use, whichever kind of area of that Microsoft stack that you're using, you can see on the diagram here, Copilot wraps around all of it to leverage that kind of real AI power. But it all sits underneath on Microsoft's cloud hosting platform, which is called Azure. And underneath all of that, really kind of foundational and fundamental by design at the very bottom of this diagram is that kind of respect of your identity, security, the ability to manage and the ability to stay compliant. That is built in sort of first and foremost to everything that Microsoft does, and AI is no different to all of that. So again, we'll see that more as we go through, but it's important to know that nothing's changed with respect to you being in control of your data and you being in control of who accesses that and how it's used, regardless of the tool. So going into a little bit more detail, these are apps that you're probably all familiar with, and these are the ones that are probably going to feature most heavily in your business. On the left-hand side, we won't go through them all, but it's the productivity apps that we already just talked about, Outlook, PowerPoint, OneNote, SharePoint, Teams, and so on. And on the right-hand side, the business applications that support specific operations. You can see here things like marketing, remote assist, field service. The ones that are most applicable to small businesses are Dynamics 365 Sales, which is Microsoft's CRM solution. And then right in the center here, the finance offering, Business Central, now much more enhanced by Microsoft Copilot. Just to kind of summarize there what Business Central is and does. It's a finance system. It is a perfect replacement for things like QuickBooks, things like Xero, things like Sage. It's got tight integration to Copilot, Teams, Outlook, and Power BI, as you'd expect. And just on that point, interesting, I mean, I say as you'd expect, years ago, when I first started implementing this stuff, that is what people expected. I remember a lot of times when people would say, well, it's on Microsoft, so it talks to each other, right? And fast forward a few years, it's nice to be able to say yes, but actually it's taken a lot of effort to get to that stage by those teams at Microsoft. Now, it is cool to be in a position where we've got this whole stack of products where everything talks to everything else. And we'll see some of that today. So it's really the hub of your finances with strong reporting, rock solid automation for your business. And again, we'll look at some of that today. So next couple of slides are going to be some examples of Business Central look and feel, what it can do, some of the kind of things that really mark it out and differentiate it from other tools. And part of the reason I wanted to show these is well, twofold really. First of all, not everybody might be using Business Central, so I wanted to give an idea of the kind of look and feel, but also some of the things that we'll see actually aren't involving AI at all. And it's important when you think about deploying AI in your business that you recognize that it's one way of handling a specific scenario, one tool, one way to sort of assist your process. But some of what we're doing here, connecting systems together, business process automation, you can do those just in standard Business Central and Microsoft 365. So then when we put Copilot on top, we're only enhancing those even further. So if we have a look at an example of this, this is, if you like, the Business Central look and feel. This is what you see when you first log in. See that it's all browser-based, highly customizable. All these boxes that we see on screen can be absolutely kind of removed based on what your role is. But crucially, depending on your role, you can bring front and center the areas that you need for you. It's all very, very customizable, and it all looks very similar. So customers, vendors, inventory items, they all take the same look and feel with data on the left and information about the record you selected on the right. Anything that you don't want to see can be hidden, so we can get rid of irrelevant information to you. Each user can do that individually. And the same applies to things like, in this case, a customer card. I love that we have photos of our customers. If you don't ship products, you can hide the shipping tab. If you do ship products, you can promote that front and center. And every single blue number across the whole system can be moused over. And once it's underlined, you can click on it and you can keep drilling down into the underlying entries that make that number up. So instead of having to run reporting, you can just keep drilling down. We could even have gone further on that example there and navigated through into all of the bookkeeping entries that it made into the accounts, all of the sales tax, VAT entries, depending where you're based. And even there, you're not having to run complex reporting to just get down to the detail that you need. So just right off the bat, no AI at all. That ease of use and personalization is really baked in to Business Central. Expanding on that a little bit further, you can see that here more. I'm going to pause the video in a second, but this customer here has a credit limit of $10,000, and we're going to deliberately exceed that by creating a sales order for some whiteboards. So we're going to populate those onto this sales order. We will get a prompt saying that the customer's credit limit has been exceeded, but that prompt is only really shown at this point in the notifications bar on Business Central itself. Not everybody uses Business Central in the business, probably only the finance and operations team. I've flicked across into another tab here. I'm just going to pause the video because it runs a little bit fast to explain this point. I've moved across into something called Microsoft Power Automate. Again, not AI yet, but very much available in the Microsoft stack of products. And I've not got any development background. I've not got a shred of coding experience. Here, my experience is in finance, consultancy, sales. So I feel comfortable saying that everything I've done here, if you're not a developer on this webinar as well, you could absolutely do this too. It's very drag and drop. What I've done here is said, connected up to my Business Central, connected it up to my teams. Those are standard connectors when you use each of those products. And I've said, when a customer's credit limit is exceeded, find which customer it was and post a message into a Teams channel. So you can see here, just to let you know, this customer's credit limit of X amount has been exceeded. please reach out to the email on that customer card to resolve. And what we'll see when that starts playing again is then if I jump into Teams, that's actually posted that message to say a Datum Corporation's credit limit of 10,000 has been exceeded. Please reach out to Robert to resolve. Now, the reason that you would do this, kind of touched on before, is because a lot of people don't use the finance system. All of your salespeople, all of your account management, perhaps some people in the warehouse, procurement, whatever it is, not everybody's going to be a finance user. And so what you can do here is, start to leverage that financial data. I'm just going to finish playing that video. Leverage that financial data, but use something like Power Automate to literally automate those business processes and present the information to the people that are going to do something about it. So in this case, the salespeople, whoever owns that account can message Robert, in this case, give him a call and say, your credit limit's been exceeded. We're going to need you to settle your balance before we can actually ship your order out. We can see that sort of taken one step further on this next slide, where the person that is responsible for the finance system can go and get further information, copy the link through to the posted sales invoice, go back into Teams and post that URL. And Teams will recognize that that link belongs to Business Central. And then again, anybody inside of Teams, don't have to be a licensed Business Central user, can drill down onto that information. You can see here that we've not left the Teams window, and yet that user can see all of that information. So when they're on the phone to Robert, they can say, hey, this latest invoice for you, invoice 3218, maybe we pay that one off, or we, clear down your oldest balance. The point is presenting information to the people who are actually going to use it, but using Microsoft tools, in this case, Power Automate, Business Central, and Teams all together. So I like those examples, and I wanted to kind of bring those to everybody's attention, because going back to what I said at the start of this section, this isn't using AI yet, but it is really important to start to think about, well, actually, how could I do more with what I have? How could I connect systems and processes together? Because then when we put AI in, we can do, even more of that if you've got that kind of mindset already. So let's move across now to Microsoft Copilot. Again, just going to double check to see any questions, anything through into the chat. All good. So Microsoft Copilot is kind of covering off really multiple copilots, if you like, because we have Copilot sitting in things like Microsoft 365. We've got Copilot in the Power Platform, Copilot in Dynamics 365 as well, which is obviously what we're going to look at today. But in reality, Microsoft are investing heavily across all of their different products. And I think I spoke to somebody once that said there's something like 600 products across Microsoft. So, there's going to be a Copilot for Xbox coming up in not too long as well. But just because they all sit in different products doesn't mean that you can't use them across everything. And in particular, we'll see some of that in Copilot Microsoft 365 in a second, and obviously also in Copilot within Business Central. And the reason for building Copilot into all of these different products is kind of what we touched on before, that it saves people time so they can focus on their most important work. Again, looking at that work trend index report, you can go and have a look at the URL there. 2/3 of people said it saved them time. 2/3 of people said it improved the quality of their work. 70% said they were more productive with Copilot. And then crucially at the end, 77% said they didn't want to give it up. Anecdotally, I would definitely agree with that. I used it a few times today already. I've been investigating how it can work for a customer. It's a really powerful tool, and you keep getting more out of it. Microsoft keep investing new features and functions within it, keeps getting connected to more and more data. So it's really, really powerful. And the reason it's so powerful is because, it has that large language model capability, like things like ChatGPT. Just going to put another question here to see if anybody has been using any of these tools already. So there's a poll up saying, what AI products are you using in your business currently? So yeah, large language model capability like ChatGPT, but this is far more than just ChatGPT in Microsoft 365 apps, because it's got that power of large language models combined with all of the Microsoft data in what Microsoft call their graph and the Microsoft 365 apps. So you have not only that kind of generative language capability, but it's got access to both your business content and the context with which those messages were written. So it can access calendar, emails, chats, documents, meetings, contacts to help you do things that you might never have been able to do before. So you could say something like, summarize the team's thoughts on the latest project, and Copilot will generate a summary based on the meetings that the business has had, any emails and chat threads that have been going on, and bring together any documents as well. But crucially, it will respect the security, compliance, privacy that already exist inside your organization. So if you say, for example, summarize the team's latest thoughts on annual pay review, it's not going to leverage documents or chat that the person asking that question doesn't have access to. So if you try and say, what's the CEO paid? It won't find that data. If your sort of permissions on that data are correct, it will absolutely respect those. And crucially, another concern that we know exists with some of the more kind of commercial AI tools, the likes of free versions of ChatGPT, is these 3 points. When you're using Microsoft's Copilot chat, either the free version or Copilot M365 chat, when you're signed in, your chat data is not saved, the prompts are discarded, Microsoft can't see your data or your prompts, and they don't use anything that you put in to train the model. So you can't really overstate those points enough. They are fundamental to making sure that your data is not used anywhere else. It's your personal and your company data, and it's protected when you use the Microsoft solution. Excuse me. So now we're going to look at an example of how that can actually work in practice. I've got here on screen a deliberately long, deliberately complex PDF, 127 pages of Fabric end-to-end security. Very complex document, probably not one that I would ever have time to read. What I've also got sitting in Microsoft Word is a pre-prepared prompt that I want to use in Copilot Chat. I've pasted that prompt into Copilot Chat and then given it the input of that 127-page PDF, because I want it to follow a very specific set of instructions and then give me output based on that document. And you can see here that it's done exactly as I've asked. It's got a technical briefing with a 20-word summary, a 10 bullet point summary. All the content is summarized, the key takeaways, the opinions and ideas, any relevant dates and actions to follow up. Those are all in my prompt, and those are all defined in the output based on that massive PDF. Then what I can do is hit edit in Pages, which uses Microsoft's Copilot Pages functionality to collaborate with my team. So I can tag, in this case, Matt Kiernan, our CTO, and say, you might be interested in collaborating on this. You'll see there that by design, he doesn't have access to that until I share with him and notify. So even though I can tag him, Copilot's respecting the controls, the permissions, the security that I have in my environment, and making sure that I'm sort of opting in to collaborate with him on this. But from that point forward, we can collaborate. And I think I'd really encourage you to consider how you might use a similar example in your own business, because in that example there, I've taken, a 128-page document that realistically nobody other than those with the deepest interest in Microsoft's end-to-end fabric security are going to have time to look at. But been able to say, okay, well, maybe if a customer now asks me, is Fabric secure? Is Copilot secure? Yeah, it is actually, because we can see here what we've done is we've interpreted that at-length document and summarized it into something that we can then perhaps share with our customers. A real world use case of speeding up and automating some of those processes that really simply wouldn't have been possible with the time that we had available. We would have just said, here's a link to the documents if you need it, rather than being able to actually kind of summarize and paraphrase for them. And I expect you have a huge number of those sorts of things in your business, whether it's newsletters, technical briefings, summary documents, health and safety policies, regulatory guidelines, compliance. All of this can be ingested, and of course we can work with you on supporting you on that, but all of this can be ingested into Copilot, potentially even a Copilot agent, which we'll come to look at a little bit later, to really kind of drive that kind of sort of efficiency and automation, and really do things that just wouldn't have been possible previously. So that's Microsoft 365 Copilot. We've also looked at Dynamics 365 Business Central standalone. What we're going to go on to look at now is the two together, Copilot inside Business Central. The idea here is that we improve productivity, unlock creativity, eliminate repetitive tasks. Effectively, though, what Copilot's trying to do is around these key areas, and we're going to see some examples of this today: guide, find, compare, analyze, and suggest. And that point at the bottom around a growing skill set, that's really important. We will come back to that towards the end of this section to see how Microsoft are releasing even more capabilities inside Copilot. So looking first at perhaps the most kind of familiar example of Copilot, it's where we're using what we've kind of seen already, Copilot Chat, but now inside Business Central. So what's really cool about this is because the chat is sat inside Business Central, it's grounded in your company and business data. It understands that it's inside Business Central. It understands that the questions that you ask are going to implicitly mean that you want Business Central data to be presented in the answer. There's a really nice video from Microsoft here which shows that working. So I'm going to go ahead and play that now because it shows some of the really strong examples of how this can work.
You're used to asking questions to uncover the insights you need and solving problems by chatting with coworkers, customers, or vendors. Now, Copilot in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central offers you a new way to continue the conversation. Copilot is your everyday AI companion for work, built on Microsoft's industry-leading privacy and security. It's here to help you find the answers to your questions quickly and easily. For the first time, Business Central users are empowered to interact with their data using their own words. Use Copilot to skip traditional menu navigation and locate records faster. Didn't find exactly what you were looking for? You can ask follow-up questions to clarify and refine your search. Copilot acts as a virtual assistant, helping you track down the right information at the right time, all using natural language. Even complex searches become easy. Get answers to questions on how, when, or why to do things. So new users can get up to speed quickly, and longtime employees can learn new skills. Copilot gives your employees an edge by leading them to the next step, so processes are easier to learn and problems are easier to solve. With every day bringing something new, Copilot helps you reclaim time so you can work smarter, adapt faster, and perform better. Be ready for what's next with Dynamics 365 Business Central.
I think that's a really cool video. Hopefully you agree. Anyone that's using Business Central already can actually go ahead and check that out. What I really like about it, as well as the fact that it demonstrates the examples nicely, is that you've got kind of three types of examples. You've got that first one that says, show me something or display information from my data. What are the latest invoices? Which one was sent in the last few weeks? How many of this item do we have in stock? That's really cool, again, rather than having to run a report. But then I also like for new users how you can get access to the help documentation and understand what capabilities there are in the product. I know for sure, learning Business Central for the first time, I would have appreciated some guidance on some of those more kind of complex areas that they're also quite unique to Business Central, things around posting groups and that area, those sorts of areas. It's great to sort of see that Copilot is actually able to kind of present that front and center to you as users. So moving on to the next area, the bank reconciliation. Now, I'm not going to make you watch a video on reconciling the bank, but there is this animated section here on the slide. And again, what I like about this is that we've taken something that's crucial to get right, but really mundane and hard to speed up. Now, in the example on that kind of animated clip, they're actually drag dropping a bank statement in to start the process off. You can connect your Business Central Live to get bank feeds from supported banks across North America and the UK. So that already kind of speeds the process up. But what I really like about this is that Microsoft aren't over-promising what Copilot can do. It says the standard functionality here matches 2 out of the 8 lines, and then Copilot's gone ahead and matched 4 more. So 75% of the work is done for you. 25% is left to you to validate, verify, and kind of expand on. That could be things that are on the bank statement that don't sit in the ledger at all. So, there would be no way for Business Central to make that match. So you might need to post those charges from the bank statement through into your Business Central. Now, you always would have needed to do that, but you would have needed to do it after that manual reconciliation process. And so, as I said, I think it's cool that Microsoft aren't saying, this is the answer to all your problems. You're never going to have to reconcile the bank again. What they are saying is, let us do what we can. Let Copilot make it as strong of a reconciliation as possible. That leaves you with a whole chunk more time to do the bits that only you can do, perhaps transferring those entries, as I said. There's an example we'll see later on where there's somebody literally with their hands behind their head when Copilot took the wheel on something, but I think that might be optimistic. So the next example, moving away from sort of the day-to-day processing, queries, reconciliations, and that sort of thing. Obviously, one of the key responsibilities of somebody in the finance team, especially somebody typically more senior, CFO and whatnot, is to be able to analyze the data. You're posting all these transactions every day, every week, every month. What do you do with the data? How do you get insights? How do you report to stakeholders? How do you draw meaningful conclusions on what that data is telling you? And that's where Copilot, again, can be leveraged to, as it says here, get to key insights faster. So there's been, for the last few versions of Business Central, this ability to analyze on what we call kind of ledger entry tables, customer ledger entries, general ledger entries, and so on. And you can see that being used here. Again, what I'm going to do is play a short video of the Microsoft functionality, but then you'll see my own version of that, which isn't as slick, but it is real world. And what I wanted to do is really show you that actually the functionality that Microsoft puts in the promotional videos gives a great overview of what it can do. And then the reality is, thankfully, very, very similar. So we'll look at that in a second.
Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central has powerful built-in capabilities to analyze and report on data. But finding the insights you need takes time. Copilot simplifies analysis by transforming raw data into insightful summaries using next-generation AI. Just describe what you need, and Copilot creates totals, pivots, and filters to help you find the information you're looking for. Now you can easily explore trends and outliers without ever leaving Business Central. And it's available for most Business Central data, even your customizations, so everyone in your organization can get to insights faster. Make data-driven decisions that propel your business forward with Copilot in Business Central.
So as I said, let's go from the Microsoft overview of that into seeing it for real life. So this is me recording, going straight into the general ledger entries. This has got every single entry in this environment. So as you'd expect, huge amount of information. I'm asking it to analyze that just like we saw in that video. So I wanted to show the general ledger entries by posting month as my columns, and then GL account name is my rows. I also wanted to be able to filter by department code. So I hit generate, Copilot goes ahead and prepares the analysis tab. And then what I wanted to sort of show you here, and it took me perhaps longer than it ought to have done. Hopefully you'll have spotted it faster than I did. There's no numbers, but it has done the columns as I asked it to, the rows by GL account name, and then it's literally a matter of clicking a single button to bring the amount into the values. And I kind of deliberated over whether to just re-record this video and say, do it again, effectively add amount as my values was all I would have needed to do to my prompt. But I wanted to leave it as it is because I think it sort of shows again that Copilot is there to assist. The process of creating these analyses is still sped up, even if you have to do a little bit of that workflow for yourself, in this case, clicking on amount. And if you start to kind of incorporate Copilot, again, those of you using Business Central, go ahead and try it. Start to incorporate it in your workflow and don't be worried about experimenting. Don't be afraid of trying it out. If you've got a sandbox, it's a great place to really kind of get stuck into experimentation, because anything that you find that works for you and speeds up that workflow, even if you do perhaps have to then do something manually, is still a net gain overall. Another example of this same sort of thing is being able to kind of work the way that you want. Now, you might not want to use that analysis tab that we saw before. You may want to use Excel. And this is a cool example of how we can use what is technically Copilot for Microsoft 365 instead of Dynamics 365, but using Business Central data. So going back to what I said before, it kind of doesn't matter which Copilot you're using, because in this case, we're taking BC data and making sure that it's saved to the cloud, like you can see in the video here, and then using Copilot in Excel to, first of all, do enhanced formatting and then go on to do further analysis. So you can see here in natural language, I'm asking it to improve the formatting, get rid of blank columns, format the amount column as a number. All stuff you can do in standard Excel, but as you get more complex, as you get more comfortable with what Copilot can do, you can really ask some cool questions of it. I've asked it to add new columns, to extract data, to reformat data, to create pivot tables. You can even do enhanced analysis with, and it will do deeper analysis with things like Python formatting, Python coding, sorry, and it tells you exactly what it's doing. So you see here, the data is summarized by GL account name and posting date. I've then said add a new month. I've asked it to extract the posting month from the posting date. So rather than just having individual rows with individual dates, it's now creating a new column and adding it in. But I still click insert column. So I validate and verify that it's done it correctly. It's put that posting month in. Now I can ask it to summarize that data again, like I did inside Business Central, by GL account name and by posting month. So in this example, it's asked me to insert a separate pivot table. It's told me what it's going to do. I just scroll up to add that to a new sheet. And this time you'll see again, not perfect. I've got the account names and the amounts. Now all I need to do is click onto the month or drag that down into be my columns. And I have all that data ready to kind of carry on and do further analysis. So again, I wanted to show that, it doesn't have to be perfect world. That process of what we've done there with, a few prompts, letting Copilot work its magic over the data. It works really nicely with big lists like general ledger entries, and you can still work the way you want and enhance that workflow with, in this case, Copilot for Excel. So on a previous slide, we saw that the functionality is improving. One final video to show you on this is around the sales order agent functionality. It's launching in the US first and then coming globally. And I think what's really cool about this is it uses, an agent, as it says right there on screen. Everything that we've seen so far is more designed around a specific task. What the agent allows us to do is interact with something that's a lot more dynamic. In this case, it's a customer. So previously, the bank reconciliation, for example, Copilot has been trained to understand what the bank reconciliation process should look like and how to do the matching. Sales order agent introduces a lot more variation because, who can predict what a customer is going to ask and the way that they're going to ask it. And so that's what I want you to have in mind as you watch this video. The real power that this kind of next generation of functionality brings is still with, again, that phrase, validating and verifying, still with that very much in mind, but it's massively speeding up the process for, in this case, creating quotes, generating orders, and replying to customer emails with stock levels. So take a look at this.
For small businesses, every order matters. And with limited resources, quickly responding to orders can be challenging. The sales order agent in Dynamics 365 Business Central sets out to change that. Let's say you are a sales manager. You can easily activate the agent right from your Business Central home screen. Once the order intake email address is provided, you are ready to go with no additional configuration required. The agent highlights tasks to be reviewed, and it's easy to see how it's engaging with inbound orders based on the timeline view. If an order email is vague, the agent can correspond with the customer to clarify and takes into account available inventory and any previously flagged customer preferences. The agent does the bulk of the work, and you only need to check the correspondence and sales quote before it's shared with the customer. With the sales order agent in Business Central, customers now get an improved ordering experience and faster delivery, while your sales team can spend their time focusing on expanding the business.
So hopefully you'll agree, even with that kind of glimpse there at that end-to-end process, that screen down the right-hand side showing the interactions that the agent is carrying out kind of on your behalf, but then still with that kind of line in the bottom of the email, for example, saying we write emails with AI and we kind of review and send with care. Nobody's trying to be duplicitous here. We're making it clear front and center that this is using AI as part of the process. But as I said before, the variation in what a customer asks for is huge, and so it's really cool to be able to see that Copilot can do, even that. And so I'm really excited to see kind of what else comes in Copilot for Business Central as we look forward into the next set of releases. There's one coming up very, very shortly, and then again in October sort of time. So I'm conscious that we have given you a huge amount of information. Started with talking around Business Central and where it fits in the Microsoft stack. We looked at Copilot for Microsoft 365. We talked about security. We looked at how Business Central and Copilot can work together. A little bit of Excel, a little bit of what's coming next. I do recognize that is a huge amount of information. And I think I've been guilty of this in the past as well, of saying, well, go ahead and start using it, crack on and put Business Central in and start using Copilot. By all means, do that. But I guess this sort of final section of the webinar really kind of explains how you can do that a little bit differently. And the challenge that we see is that, as I said, small businesses and their current partners maybe struggle to maximize and make progress with available technology. A huge amount of what we've seen today, and part of the reason for showing you a lot of what we've seen today, is that some of you are paying for this already, whether it's Power Automate, Business Central, some of the functionality in Teams. Maybe you've even got Copilot licenses switched on in your organization, but you're not sure how to use them. It's very analogous to perhaps going into a fitness store and somebody sells you a running machine and an exercise bike and then says, look, you've got all the tools you need. You've got Business Central, you've got Copilot, you've got a running machine, you can get fit. You have everything you need. This is the right tool for the job. But it puts all the responsibility on you as the customer. It can be expensive. You're not sure if it's the right fit for you. There's no accountability for actually adopting the tech. Using that fitness example, maybe you have got a running machine, but how do you know whether you're using it right to run your first 3-mile run versus a marathon? Do you run every day? Do you just go sprinting? Do you run 6 times a week? How do you actually get going? And without that goal in mind, how do you know if you're making progress? We see that time and time again. You have the tools in your business, but you're not necessarily sure how to get the most out of them. So that's where we see ourselves at Truly SMB as doing something different with a genuinely new way to approach that use of technology. And we like to use the analogy, like we've kind of touched on there, of getting your business tech fit. So rather than just selling you stuff, we would much rather be more like your technology gym. And the idea is that we've broken down that complicated project and all of the technology and kind of functionality that we've seen today, break that down into simpler, easy to consume, shorter time to value workouts. And we like to think of our consultants much more like, almost like personal trainers. So again, thinking of that example of maybe if you go to a gym and you meet a personal trainer, you know how to perhaps do an exercise, maybe not. They'll show you if not, but also they're there for accountability. So think about that Copilot example. If we're working with you to say, well, you said you were going to use Copilot in your business. You said you were going to roll it out to 5 members of your team and ask them to come up with 3 prompts and 4 use cases in your business. How did you do? What did you like? What didn't you like? What worked? What didn't? What did you have to try? Did you record it? Did you share it? Do you have a group of kind of champions in your business? It's a lot easier to not work out and not use the tech if you know somebody's not going to be there holding you accountable. So that's part of what our team will be there to do, is to really help you get the most out of what you're doing and keep making progress. And really, this is all about making little and often gains with your long-term use of technology. So don't just go and run a marathon right away. Start small. Start using Copilot with a small group of champions. Start experiencing it in the business. Then perhaps we embed it further, and then we really get the most out of it. Then we maximize it. Then we connect it to more systems. So little and often, with everybody in the business being informed on the use, that's what the Truly Fit, as we're calling it, approach is all about. You'll see here as well, this platform is launching in the summer. The idea is that it starts with getting an assessment of how fit your business is with a score. And then you'll be able to book onto the workshops that are, or the workouts rather, that are applicable to you. That might be a Copilot agents workshop. It might be a security review. But the whole point is, once we've established the areas of your business that are fitter than others, we've established what your goals are, everything's in language that's appropriate for you. If you say to us, we want to share knowledge across our business, we don't expect you to be experts in collaboration tools in SharePoint and Teams and Copilot. It's our job to use those tools to support your end business goal. And so if you do say exactly that, I'd like to share information from my finance system across my business, we'll help you understand the capabilities of all those different systems that you may already be paying for and work out the best way to achieve that goal. Business Central, Teams, Power Automate, one of the examples that we saw today. And so the idea is we increase that business tech fitness through high impact but incremental gains. So it's not give us 100 grand and 15 weeks and you'll have a new system. It's little and often on subscription packages that fit your business. I've kind of talked about this already, but ultimately do more with what you've got and discover what you've not. That summarizes it, I think, quite nicely. You're probably paying for this already. If you're on Business Central, you've got a lot of this capability already. Copilot Chat exists in Microsoft 365 for free, and then you can extend it even more with the paid version with access to all of your data and all of your apps. But you can hopefully see from today how simple a lot of this stuff is, but how impactful it can be. So that's what Truly Fit is all about. Ongoing support, ongoing knowledge, and incremental gains throughout your business to help you reach your goals. So I'm not reading all of these slides one by one. I think the point kind of gets across. It's all about suiting your business, achieving your goals. And ultimately, I touched on this as well already, but it starts with getting a Truly Fit score. So I'm going to kind of wrap up with a few next steps. You can get your Truly Fit score for yourself. And what that does is asks a series of questions. It takes about 10 minutes, but it's totally free. Gives you a report saying where you're relatively stronger or weaker, where you're relatively fitter. So you may be not so fit in AI. You may be fantastic at business applications. We look at all different areas of your business and give you a score. And then we can talk to you about where your goals might come from there. Obviously, you can talk to us anytime about using Copilot Chat, M365 Copilot. If you are using Business Central, please reach out to your account management team and book in your best practice review. If you're not with us on Business Central, reach out to us and we'll do that with you as well. If you're not on Business Central, maybe I just said if you've not on Business Central already, if you have it, best practice review. If you're not on Business Central yet, then contact us to book a free financial process review. And if you just want to get going with some of this stuff that we saw, if you just want to understand, hey, how do I start that? How do I turn it on? Then contact details will follow this webinar, and you can get in touch with us there. So that is everything for today. Thank you very much for your time and for absorbing all of that information. Hopefully there was some stuff there that you can get started with right away. As I said, we'd be happy to help you out. Just going to jump across, see if there are any questions. So I don't see questions in chat. Please feel free to put them in if you would like to. I'll stick around for a few more minutes to see if there's any in. If not, again, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for joining, and see you next time. Okay, I don't see any questions coming in. If there was one that you didn't want to ask, there is, just at the nick of time. Can Copilot help me to integrate Power BI with Business Central? That's a really good question. Can it help with the integration? It can't necessarily help with the integration itself, as in doing that connection for you, but there is native Power BI reporting capability inside Business Central, and you can use Copilot to ask questions of the data inside Power BI. So I'd be interested to understand a little bit more about what you're looking to achieve there, because you can kind of use Copilot in each product, but it sounds like maybe you're struggling to actually get Power BI talking with Business Central or kind of leveraging the Business Central data. So happy to discuss that more. If you want to drop us an email, I think I can just put that if you would like to get in touch. Happy to kind of talk that through with you in more detail. If there's no other questions though, we'll wrap things up there. Again, thank you very much for your time, and see you next time.